Everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I am Jenny Two-Tone. I'm the Executive Director here at the Natural History Institute. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Thank you. And before we introduce tonight's speaker, I just have a few quick announcements. The first thing is that restrooms are located on this other side of the wall, but to access it, you have to go through this hallway over here. Keep turning right. If you've gone up the stairs, you've gone too far. Please leave questions until the end. We'll have time afterward for a Q&A, and a reminder to please silence your cell phones. And a big thank you to Prescott Audubon Society for partnering with us on tonight's program. Collaborations like this remind us how much stronger we are when we work together, when organizations and individuals unite around a shared love of the natural world. At the Natural History Institute, we believe that a deeper connection to nature leads to care and stewardship. Partnerships like this one help us bring people together to learn, explore, and protect the places that we cherish. Right now, NHI is in the middle of our Evergreen campaign, our end-of-the-year fundraiser that keeps programs like this thriving year-round. Your support make these collaborations, our field programs, and our art exhibitions possible. If you believe in this work of learning together and caring for the natural world, we invite you to make a gift tonight. Donation envelopes and cash boxes are in the front in the lobby, and you can also donate online. If you have any trouble donating, come and see me. Together, we can keep this work growing for our community, our partners, and the natural world that inspires us all. Thank you. And now I would like to hand the microphone over to Eric Moore from The Lookout.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you for partnering with the Prescott Audubon Society. It's wonderful for this collaboration. So I'm honored tonight to introduce our speaker, but I first want to recognize that this program is really sponsored by Swarovski Optic. So sitting over here on the wall, wave Clay, is Clay Taylor. Clay is the naturalist manager for North America for Swarovski Optic. That's a big deal. He's the dude. Yeah, he's the birder and the photographer. And so Clay has been very supportive of our business, and he's been coming to Prescott for many years for our anniversary celebration, which is this weekend. And so Clay approached me a couple of months ago, probably when we were at Southwest Wings Birding and Nature Festival down in Sierra Vista, and he said, "Hey, how would you like Sharon to come and be the speaker at the Audubon meeting?" And it's like, yes, let me talk to Audubon and see if we can make that arrangement. So Clay was really the inspiration behind this meeting tonight. And speaking of our anniversary, it was 22 years ago today that we opened at Waters Garden Center. And here's a little anecdotal note for you. I had 3 customers and I did $44 in sales. My first day in business. We've come a long ways. Talk about scary times. I can remember like the week after we opened, I had this horrible day. I had a day where I had only had 2 customers and I did like $11 in sales. And I was terrified because I had quit my full-time job. I'd taken out a home equity line of credit to finance the upstart of my business, and my wife and I had 6 kids at home. And it's like, what did I do? It was terrifying. But the Lord has been so good to us, and here we are 22 years later today. So along that note, thank you. Thank you very much. So as part of our anniversary celebration, several times, Clay has come up and been a speaker for Prescott Audubon in the past because it coincides with your meetings and our event. We're having 2 guided bird walks, one tomorrow afternoon at Willow Lake with Clay and Sharon. And maybe after you hear Sharon speak, you'll say, I want to go on a bird walk with her. And so I brought the sign-up sheets with me so we can fill up that bird walk tomorrow. And then we have another bird walk Saturday morning at 8 a.m. at Watson Lake at the Peavine Trail parking lot. So after tonight's program, if you say, I'd really like to go on one of those 2 bird walks, come see me. I'll be up here, and you can sign up and be a part of our anniversary celebration. And then come to the store Saturday. We're doing a fundraiser for Date Creek Ranch. We're working with Central Arizona Land Trust to get a permanent conservation easement at the ranch headquarters. And it's a lovely place. We value it greatly. And we're going to be serving beef from Date Creek Ranch Saturday at our open house. So 11 to 2, free lunch. We'll announce the winners of the photo contest. Lots of good things happening. I think that's everything, and except for introducing Sharon. So I'm going to have to put my glasses on to do this. So I met Sharon over 20 years ago when I used to attend a trade show down in Georgia. It was called Birdwatch America, and it was at the Georgia International Convention Center, and that's where we first met.
Yeah.
Long, long time ago. That's true. That's where I met Clay. That's right. So Sharon is widely known as the Birdchick, and she is a writer and speaker who has made it her career to get paid to go birding. Pretty good gig, I'd say. She wrote the books Disapproving Rabbits, 1001 Secrets Every Birder Should Know, and North American Birdwatching for Beginners, and regularly appears on television, podcast, and radio, answering bird questions, as well as performs in storytelling shows. She's worked a variety of jobs, including bird surveys, bird tour leader, park ranger, and was even the voice of Denali National Park and Preserve. She currently resides in Minnesota with a retired Denali sled dog named Party Pants. Please welcome Sharon.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It suddenly dawned on me that the one career I'm not going to talk about tonight is my time running a wild bird feeding store for about 8 years. And going around Eric's store today, I was like, oh yeah, this is an amazing store. I miss this. No, I don't miss this, but but it is a fantastic store, and it's a pleasure to be here and finally get to see it in person.
Tell a story on you?
I thought we're uh-oh.
She called me Jay today.
In my defense, Clay's fault. I was jet lagged, and then also 90% of people in my phone have nicknames and not actual names. And we can talk about that later. So this, some of them don't have bird names. Some of them have names like "Do Not Respond." So this is a program that I've given over the years, and I have some news stories that I'm testing out, but I have always tried to get paid to go birding. It is one of my absolutely favorite things. And when I started off, when I thought about getting paid to go birding, this is the dream. This is what you think it's going to look like. You're hanging out at a Swarovski booth with a northern goshawk, or I'm sorry, American goshawk now, and it's just going to be cool stuff all the time, when in reality what really happens is you get paid to get vomited on by about 2,500 baby pelicans and get the second worst parasite you've ever had in your life. Fun fact, pelicans and cormorants have a parasite inside their pouches called pouch lice. It's only supposed to survive on avian blood. When you band baby pelicans, they vomit on you as a defense mechanism. So the pouch lice gets on you. It can't survive on mammal blood, but it tries really hard. And because pouch lice is used to dark, wet places, that's where it goes on you and bites, and you can feel it. But I digress. I have had a varied career, everything from giving bird programs at science fiction and fantasy conventions, where I've been asked questions like, hey, if I'm going to write a novel about an elf that turns into a Merlin, what kind of personality traits would that elf have? Which I thought was actually a fair question. But so I've done all sorts of things, from giving bird programs, running a wild bird feeding store, and writing. And when I first started out with what I was doing, I was just kind of hoping to go birding for free, to not have to pay anything. And I started off by blogging, back when that was a thing, back in 2004. And so I would just write about anything and everything that I saw. And one of the things that I love about birding is that you have something to do no matter where you go. I remember once landing in Las Vegas and opening up the Bird's Eye app, and it alerted me. It's like, hey, there's a crystal thrasher within 5 miles of here. And I thought, ooh, I'm going to get a cab before I get to the hotel. I'm going to have that cab take me to this city park, and I got my life for Crystal Thrasher. So, and it's fun things like writing about that. And whenever I move into a new apartment complex or somewhere, I always warn them that I'm a birder, and I always warn them that I'm going to be wandering around a lot with binoculars and spotting scopes. And sometimes I might be on the sunroof, and I might look like I'm aiming that scope at somebody's window, but I'm really aiming it at the crabapple tree where the cedar waxwings are feeding. This was one particular place that I lived where we had common nighthawks displaying constantly, and they would wake me up. And so I was like, hey, is there any way I can get on top of the roof that's not the sunroof? And like, oh, no, insurance liability. And it's like, but there might be this really cool bird up there. Okay, and so we went up there, and we did actually find common nighthawks nesting on the roof of the apartment building. So it helped that I was like legitimately pointing out birds to them. One of my favorite things that I ever wrote about was an owl nest that was at Lake Harriet in Minneapolis. Now, I know we're not supposed to reveal owl nests, but this is a very popular park, and everybody knew about this nest. It was right over a main trail. I found out about it one day when I just wandered in for spring migration, and a local homeless man said, hey, there's an owl over by the cemetery trail. And I was like, thank you. And sure enough, there was. And so everybody got to see it. The owls, you would not believe some of the wrappers that I would find underneath their nests. They put up with a lot of things happening at night in the park. But I would go out there. Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah. Very tolerant of nocturnal activities. But I went over there one day to take some pictures of the owl chicks that were hanging out. And while I was taking this photo, and it was about 9 a.m. in the morning, they're kind of active, and I can hear in the neighboring cemetery a great horned owl hooting, and the female at the nest was hooting back. And you can tell them apart because the females have a lighter pitched hoot than the males. And so that was kind of going back and forth. And then all of a sudden I heard kick, 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 and I was like, ooh, that's a Cooper's hawk. That doesn't sound friendly. And so sure enough, the great horned owl got very interested in that sound and was kind of hissing and hooting back. And then the Cooper's hawk flew in and it started interacting with the great horned owl. And I was like, well, that's interesting. I wonder what's going to happen here. Well, much to my surprise, all the crows flew in, very angry about what was happening. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. We got a great horned owl. We got a bunch of crows really mad. I'm still hearing some more hooting over here. The Cooper's hawk is going crazy. The Cooper's hawk then went over to the great horned owl nest and tried to dive bomb the chicks in the nest. And normally I kind of think of great horned owls as the Sunday driver of the raptor world. I have never seen an owl streak by so fast. She went straight to that nest and she was mantling over it. Those chicks were not going to get dive bombed by that Cooper's hawk at all. They actually looked a little proud, like, my mom is awesome. I'm going to be fine here. And so I'm just watching all this happening. I'm like, how is this going to end? Because the Cooper's hawk it's like a trampoline. It's going back and forth and up and down on top of this great horned owl, and she's hissing and mantling, and the crows are just screaming, and more crows are coming in, and then something completely unexpected happened. A helicopter flew over right above the trees and started dropping little corn pellets on all of us. Well, the crows took off. The great horned owl took off, then a third great horned owl that I didn't even know was there took off. The Cooper's hawk took off. I'm coated in corn. Mallards are flying in to eat the corn, or the corn pellets. And I'm like, what is going on? And that's when I noticed the sign on the ground that said, hey, FYI, we're doing some mosquito control. And so what the city of Minneapolis does is they deposit these pellets in wetlands and lakes, and there's some ingredient in there that prevents mosquito larvae from pupating, and so that's one of the ways we have mosquito control. I'm not sure what it does to mallards who eat it, but boy, did they love eating it. And so everybody flew away, and then the little great horned owlets hunkered down in their nest and kind of rested for a little bit. And I hung out and I hung back just to see what would happen. And within about 5 minutes, the female came back and everybody was happy with what was going on. But I just went out randomly at 9 a.m. when I had the day off, and I got this incredible story that happened. And that's just one of the things that I love about birding. Some days it's nothing, but some days you get a really exciting story with even a species that you might know really well. Now, this nest had a bunch of different pellets underneath it, and I would sometimes gather them and take them apart because it's fun. And this particular pellet I took apart, and it had a lot of feathers in it, and you can see it had like a mandible from a bird beak on there. And you can't see it in this picture, but there was also a small jawbone. I was like, boy, I wonder what all this stuff is. Well, I happen to work for a national park site that had a visitor center inside the Science Museum of Minnesota. So I thought, I'm just going to take these with me, and I'm going to call Dr. Dickel Linschlager one day and just ask him if he can help me identify these. He was in charge of the collections at the museum. So I went there, and I called down to his office, and I was like, hey, Oli, how you doing? Oh, Sharon, I'm just having my sandwich right now. I was like, cool. When you have some time, I have some unidentifiable animal parts from an owl pellets. I'll be right up. So he races up. He still has traces of the meatball sandwich around his mouth. And he's looking at it. He's like, oh, this is so cool. He's like, well, this is a house finch beak. I can tell you that much. And these feathers, these are the crest feathers from a blue jay. But this jawbone, I got to take the jawbone downstairs. I'm like, cool. So he goes downstairs for about an hour, and he comes back upstairs. He's like, Sharon, I'm really sorry. I could only narrow it down to 2 species because one particular tooth is missing from the jawbone. And I was like, okay, well, what is it? I'm thinking he's probably going to go vole and shrew. No, he goes red bat or hoary bat. And I was like, I'm impressed you got it to bat. He's like, if it had this one tooth, I could identify it for you. But I found it really fascinating because, again, I think of owls as the Sunday driver of the bird world. And here in one owl pellet was 3 different flighted creatures, a blue jay, a house finch, and either a red bat or a hoary bat. So when you want to work in birds, whether you're doing it for free or you're actually starting to make a lot of money, you do a lot of travel. And I love all the weird places that birding can take you in your travels. I mean, a lot of people will tell me that they've gone to Spain, but I'm like, well, have you been on top of Monfragüe Castle in Monfragüe National Park and watched the vultures and had a beer? And most of the time they say no, that I don't go to Spain to watch vultures. But I do, and I think it's fantastic. And if you ever have a chance to go to that part of Spain, I highly recommend it because you do get these gigantic griffon vultures just flying by at you at eye level. Sometimes birding takes you to really unexpected places. And this is a trip that I took. I used to be married to a non-birder. Yeah, used to be. And this was one time when he was a really good sport. We were contracted to go down and do some film work down there. We were contracted to go down to Florida. And I tried to have one day where we could do something he wanted to do so it just wasn't all birding all the time. And I asked what he wanted to do, and he said, I'd really like to go to Canaveral National Seashore. I have a new camera lens I want to test out. I'm like, cool. Is it okay if I take my spotting scope with me? Yes, but I don't want to stand around for an hour in the sun while you're trying to parse out shorebirds. And I said, fair. Well, I won't get too distracted. So we go to Canaveral National Seashore, and we sit up there, and he says, honey, I want you to stand on the beach here, and I'm going to test out this lens, and just pretend to be looking through your spotting scope. So I aim my spotting scope. I hear giggling. I think someone knows where I'm going with this. I aim my spotting scope down the beach, and there's people, and then there's clearly a sign about 4 miles down that says, you know, no people beyond this point, and there's this huge flock of terns. And at the time, I was trying to digiscope as many birds as possible in a year as a fundraiser for Zach Zimbog, and I could see there were sandwich terns in there, and I didn't have sandwich terns yet. And so I was like, hey, there's some sandwich terns. If at some point today we could work down there and I could get some footage of them, that would be great. He's like, that's fine, keep holding still. So I'm like, okay, cool. So I keep scanning the beach, and I'm like, sunbathers, sunbathers, sunbathers. And then I stopped on one particular guy with my scope, and I laughed, and I was like, honey, it's really funny. The way this guy is standing, it looks like he's naked. And then he turned, and I said, holy crap, that guy is naked. And my ex-husband said, that's great, honey. Maybe don't aim your spotting scope at him. And so then I'm just scanning, and there is clearly a whole pack of naked people at the end of all the clothed people. And I'm like, what is going on? We're in a national park site. There's no nudity in national parks. And I'm scanning, and then I saw a man and a woman walking. She was fully clothed, holding his hand. He was naked with a metal detector. And I was like, okay, that metal detector is highly illegal in a national park site. What is going on? So we finished testing his camera lens, and I'm like, we gotta go to the sandwich turn, honey, and that's also where all the naked people are. And we go down, and there's parking spots about every half mile. We get to the final parking spot, and it's also the most crowded parking lot. And there are things that say, I'd rather be naked than be in an office, as bumper stickers on cars. And so we get to the dune, and I'm like, I'm just going to do some recon work. And so I go up to the top of the dune, and it's naked people. And then there's an invisible line of fully clothed people. And I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. And then here's the sign that says no people beyond this point, and that's the flock of terns. And there's 3 sandwich terns in there. So I went down and I said, yeah, it's a nude beach, all right. And the sandwich terns are there. I'm going in. And he said, that's great, I'm not. And I said, cool, you can hold my clothes. So I handed him my clothing, and he looked at it, and he's like, in for a penny, in for a pound. So he took off his clothes, and we put them all in our backpack, and we went in. Now, FYI, if you go into a nude beach with binoculars and spotting scopes, if you're wearing, I was also wearing a binocular harness, people are going to have a lot of questions for you. And I focused in right away on a willet. And I'm like, I'm going to make a big production of looking at the willet and not looking at people. And sure enough, people are coming up and like, hey, what you doing here? And I was like, I'm a birder. I'm trying to work my way to some sandwich terns over there. And one of them said, oh, did you hear about the big alcid eruption that we're having this winter? And I was like, I haven't. I'm surprised you heard about it. So she gave me the skinny, and we kept... We kept going. Funny that you giggle at that. Being from Minnesota and not people who go to nude beaches all the time, not only were we the palest, we were the hairiest people there. So a man comes up and starts asking us about what we're doing, and it suddenly dawns on me as he's wearing his aviators that I can see my reflection in his sunglasses, and it's very distracting. And turns out, he's from Duluth, Minnesota. Now, when I did this, I was like, I'm from Minnesota. No one's going to know it's me. He recognized my sandhill crane tattoo. And I was like, okay, great. And he said, so, are you a member of any other naturalist communities? And I was like, well, I'm on the board of the Minnesota Naturalist Association. And my husband was like, wrong naturalist, honey. And I said, oh! No. This is just a when in Rome thing. I'm just here to get some sandwich terns and try this stuff out. So we actually do work our way to the sandwich terns. Oh, there are also some royal terns in there too. But I got the sandwich tern pictures. And I worked for the National Park Service at the time. So I went back to Minnesota, and I went to my supervisor's office, and I was like, hey, quick question. Hypothetically, if I were naked in a national park, at maybe a nudist colony that shouldn't be there, and I wanted to write a story about it and perform it, would there be any problems with that? And he took off his glasses, and he pinched his nose, as he so often did with me. And he said, were you on Park Service time? And I said, no, I was on Birdchick time. This was totally annual leave. No, nothing. He's like, yeah, it should be fine. And I said, how is there a nudist colony at Canaveral National Seashore, a national park site? Well, I'm glad you asked. They can't get rid of them. They have tried. It is illegal to be naked in that park and in that county, but they just keep coming back. So they've just made a gentleman's agreement with them that they stay in that one particular place and that they don't go anywhere near junior ranger programs. So being married to a birder if you're a non-birder can be kind of a challenge. So eventually, I started getting paid to go birding some more. I started writing books. This is Laura Erickson and I doing a book signing at the Rio Grande Valley Bird Festival the exact same day an Amazon kingfisher was reported 10 minutes away. No one came to our signing, and we had to wait until the signing was done before we could go look for the bird. We did. Everybody saw it. It was an amazing bird. So many birders were out on the highway that the sheriff had to come out and direct traffic around us because the Amazon kingfisher kept going back and forth. And like a swarm, well, actually like a murmuration, we were just kind of going back and forth along the highway. I've done quite a few bird surveys for energy consulting firms. I even was on the ivory-billed woodpecker search team, so I get to hide out in ghillie suits sometimes. Sometimes winter wrens tried to roost in me. Sometimes I'm just in cold, dark boxes on a prairie. I make really poor food choices. Although this was a really good day. This was a gas station taco in Texas. If you're ever in Texas, you have to have a gas station taco. Number one, it's your most reasonable shot at a vegetable. And number two, they're really tasty. This was one day when I was at a hotel, and I misunderstood when they said that the restaurant would be open at 5. I thought they meant 5 a.m. They meant 5 p.m. So, and there was no coffee. So I had a leftover iced coffee in my rental car from Dunkin' Donuts, and I ran to the gas station next door and pounded down some cold Chef Boyardee ravioli. Yes, what I've done for birds. Sometimes, you think maybe being out in the middle of nowhere you wouldn't have a traffic jam, but sometimes some Bob Whites make you late to your point count. I'm trying to talk to them nicely about getting out of the road. It was like that. It was like that for half a mile. I started my survey 20 minutes late. Sometimes you're leading tours and you hear a weird noise and then you suddenly realize, oh, there's an ant hatch happening in my room. This was hilarious. I got into my hotel room and I looked at the microwave and I saw some frass on top of it and was like, wow, that's really big. Is that a mouse? And that's we should probably talk to the front desk. And then a big ant fell down and then I looked up and I saw where the plaster met the wood that these were all emerging. So I went down to the front desk and I'm trying to use translate, like, migas? And I showed them the picture. Oh, see. And I was like, hatch! And they came to my room and took care of it, but there were still about 500 ants in my room when I came back. Oftentimes, this is my bathroom. And this is when it's great. Sometimes 2 months later, this is the same bathroom. Cool to have a snowy owl there, but a lot less privacy. Sometimes cattle try to sneak up behind you and eat the padding off of your tripod. This one got really close, as you can see in the split. And so I did this kind of work as freelance for many, many years. And then I had the opportunity to get a full-time stable job with the federal government. And I wondered at the time, I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea. And I was doing my final day of surveys in Texas, and it was a perfect day. I woke up that day. It's dark out. I'm eating my gas station taco. There's a burrowing owl calling. I suddenly hear this, and like 10 feet from me as it gets lighter, this greater roadrunner was waking up next to me and calling and preening. I had all the perfect weather, all the perfect birds. It was a fantastic day. And then I just remember driving, and it was like, am I making a big mistake? I mean, I'm having the best day here in Texas. I get all these frequent flyer miles. I get to see these amazing birds that most people don't to see. Maybe I don't want to work for the federal government. Maybe I don't want to be the man. And that's when I noticed the biggest wasp I've ever seen in my entire life in my minivan with me. And it went from 72 to stop. I just slammed on the brakes. How I didn't flip the minivan, I don't know. But I opened up all the doors, got outside. The wasp came out and jumped on the ground, which to me seemed even more terrifying. So I got my phone and I'm Googling giant black wasp. And it said, with red wings? And I'm like, yes, what is that? Tarantula hawk. That was my lifer tarantula hawk. This is not my picture. This is not my hand. That would not ever be my hand, willingly. But that's what it was. And being in Arizona, I'm sure you're familiar with this. I don't mind tarantulas. I actually find them fun. I've had them hang out with me on surveys, especially after it rained. But something that will hunt and stun a tarantula, that seems way worse. And also reading things like, has the second most painful sting on the planet. Bullets answer the only thing worse. And so I thought, okay, maybe I do want to work for the federal government for a little while. And so yeah, I chose a federal career as a park ranger because stability. And I actually had a lot of fun at the National Park Service. This was me at the State Fair doing some invasive carp interpretation. I made sure people got the message. But I also did a lot of bird surveys for the National Park Service. Some of my favorite surveys that I did was we would fly over the Mississippi River, sometimes in a float plane, sometimes in a helicopter, and we would count bald eagles, we would count pelicans, cormorants, and all the waterfowl. And we would fly about 120 miles an hour, about 100 feet above the Mississippi River. And it's a lot harder than you think. So when we're looking at waterfowl, this is typically how we see them. Can anyone identify these ducks? Just shout it out. Ruddy duck, yeah. Gadwall. Common goldeneye. Excellent. You guys know your birds. So yeah, I mean, like you could do this. This is the view that I would have. This was a good day. This was during the tundra swan migration. They were easy to pick out. But oftentimes what would happen as we're going 100 miles an hour, we would see these big rafts of waterfowl up ahead. And so it's not so easy to just go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. You just kind of look at it and it's like 5,000, 40% coot, 20% scop, everything else is ringnecks. And we would, and I mean, that literally is how we're doing it. And it's not an exact thing. It's more that every year you have the same people do it and that you have kind of consistency. You're just kind of getting an approximation of how many birds are there and what the trends are. And so, yeah, we would have these little audio recorders as we're doing this. And I would the next day be at my desk. And I mean, especially if it was a really intense day. Like there was a day we had about 500,000 canvasbacks on the Mississippi River. And then some jerk bald eagle decided to scare them. And they all took off. And we had to land immediately because it would have been a slaughter for all of us. So my coworkers would be like, could you put in some headphones? I know you're birding, but you sound like you're under attack. Because there's like 500,000 canvasbacks, you know. So yeah, this was another, kind of another view. It's like, can you pick out any ducks in this picture? There are some canvasbacks in there. So in order to do this, I was required to take training called water ditching. And the first year that I did it, I was kind of a last-minute addition, and they let me take the training online. At that time, the person that did it had a very sick sense of humor, because this was training designed to give you steps that you can take if you're in a plane crash over water. And so while you're taking the training, it had this little animation of a little float plane that just kind of explodes and then crashes down into the water. And I was like, boy, that's weird. So then the next year, I had to take the in-person training. And so we had one day in a classroom where we went over all the things that you should do if a pilot says that you're about to go down into water. And then the next day, we had to go to the Y, where they had a makeshift cockpit. And we had to go in there, and they threw us into the water 4 times, and we had to practice getting out of it in our seatbelt and our clothes. And you were graded on it. I survived 3 out of 4 times. The 4th time, I had to be pulled out by one of the instructors because I got stuck. But I feel pretty good about my chances of survival because I don't think I'm going to crash 4 times in a row in an afternoon. 3 times, I'm gold. 4th, then, yeah. But there was one particular thing that they taught us, and this is what the federal government says that you should do if a pilot tells you that you are about to go down. And if we didn't do this first step, we got lots of points taken off. So any guesses as to what you think the federal government thinks you should do if a pilot tells you that we're about to go down? Any guesses? Pray. Good. No. Scream loudly. Sort of. Grab your ankles. That's actually, depending on where you are on the plane, step 4. Maybe step 6. Screaming is close. What the government thinks you should do is say, I'm a survivor. According to the federal government, that will increase your chances of survival by 50%. So I want to leave you, one thing I want you to go home with tonight is the chance to survive by 50% in a water ditching plane crash situation. So we're going to practice that. I'm going to be the pilot, and then you all say I'm a survivor. Okay, are we ready? All right, brace yourself, folks. We're going to crash into the Mississippi River. Excellent! Well done! Well done. So after a while with the Park Service, I decided I wanted to go into public affairs. And I often had to give training explaining what that is. And so this is a story that I told on the road, and I adapted it for federal training with the Park Service. So once I had to be a sober ride for a cedar waxwing. I was biking around the chain of lakes in the Twin Cities metro area, and my neighbor called me, and she's like, hey, Sharon, I'm outside the Y on Hennepin, and there's this brown bird, and it's trying to fly into the ground. I thought about the time of year, and I thought, maybe she's seeing a woodcock. They probe the ground. And I said, is it kind of like softball-shaped with a really long beak? No, it's just a bird. And I thought, she's saying bird and not pigeon. And I thought, I'm like 4 minutes away on my bike. And I said, Zoe, I'll be right over there. So I biked over, and by the time I got to the Y, there's a small crowd that has gathered, and they're all staring at the ground. And sure enough, there is a bird on the ground, flapping in circles, pressing its beak into the ground. And so I walk over, and I look at it, and I look at the trees above me, and someone asks, is it poisoned? And I said, no, it's drunk. It was March. There were some crab apples that had fermented over the winter. They're all sugary. Waxwings are gorging. So that is what this bird has done. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to bike it home, see if it'll sleep it off. And if it doesn't, I'll take it to the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. Okay, cool, thanks. So I put it in my pannier. And I love this picture because have you ever had someone overindulge at your house, maybe at a holiday party? Or maybe you had that uncle that did that when you were a kid, and they sleep on the couch, and you go in to check on them to turn out the lights, and they just kind of glare at you like, leave me alone, the room is spinning. That's exactly the look this waxwing gave me. So I biked home, and I was still married to the non-birder at the time, and I put my bike bag in the kitchen, and I said, hey, don't open my bike bag, there's a bird in it. And he said, dead or alive? Which was a fair question. We had a lot of arguments about things that he thought were leftovers in the freezer. Which I finally said, look, if it's got a 4-letter banding code and a date, you should know that's not for you. But I said, no, the waxwing's alive. It's just a little drunk. I'm going to see if it's going to be fine after dinner, and we'll take it to the Wildlife Rehab Center. So we have dinner. I go outside, and I open up my bike bag. And much like your uncle who has spent the night and maybe has had too much to drink, the waxwing had thrown up and was feeling a little bit better. It was actually standing up, and it had cast a little pellet of berry casings there, which I thought was interesting. I was like, okay, this is good. So I took it out of the bag, and I'm holding it, and it's a gorgeous bird, but it's also kind of like, and I'm like, yeah, you're spending the night. And so I put it back in the bag. I went upstairs. I took one of my rabbit travel crates and set it up with some berries and some water and gave it a place to sleep and just kept it in my bathtub overnight. The next morning, we wake up and we can hear it in the bathroom doing that little cedar waxwing, see. I'm like, okay, cool. And I go in to check on it. It's even eaten some cherries. I'm like, okay, this is great. So I take it outside, and I open up the door, and it immediately flies up and lands on a wire, which happens to be right outside my kitchen window. So I'm going out there, and I'm watching it. I'm like, okay, this is cool. And it's preening, kind of cleaning the dirty human oils off of it. And then it starts to fluff up and go to sleep. And I'm like, oh, were you not quite ready? You shouldn't have. You should be more alert at this time of day. Well, then a big flock of waxwings came by, and it perked up, and it went, zee, and it did the flight of shame home with the rest of the waxwings. I'm like, yay, all right. So this was a story that I told many times. Cut to, was it 2017, 2018? It was when the Kavanaugh hearings were happening. A sheriff, it's going to come into play. A sheriff in northern Minnesota in the fall put out a press release telling everyone in his town to calm down birds aren't attacking people, they're just drunk. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, it's the wrong time of year for drunk birds in Minnesota. And because I'm already a birding expert known in the Twin City, everybody in the media is contacting me. Sharon, did you see this story? Do you want to be on NPR and talk about drunk birds? I'm like, they're not drunk birds. Looking at the weather pattern, it's just a warbler fallout. It's just a bunch of young yellow rumps. It's not drunk birds. It's the wrong time of year. Oh, okay. So I'm at my visitor center, and Fox News calls. And they're like, hey, can we talk to you about drunk birds? I'm like, the birds really aren't drunk. Yeah, but drunk birds, can we talk to you about drunk birds? We hear you have a good drunk bird story. I said, I can talk to you about my experience with drunk birds, but their birds aren't drunk. Okay, cool, we're on our way. So I text my supervisor, I was like, hey, FYI, Fox News is coming over to talk to me about drunk birds. My supervisor comes over, wait, what's going on? And so I tell him, and he's like, okay, I'm just gonna hang out and watch this. So the reporter gets there, and I'm explaining warbler fallout and what's going on, and he says, look, the news is terrible right now. Are you watching the Kavanaugh hearings? Drunk birds is funny. Can you give me funny? And I said, so you're asking for fake news, just so I'm clear? He smiled, and I said, I tell you what, I will tell you my personal experience with drunk birds, but I will also mention fallout. Fine. So I tell the whole story. I talk about fallout. That night it's on the news. Not only does he not mention fallout, he edits it so it sounds like I'm the one that put out the press release. And I'm like, oh! And I'm like, you know what? It's Fox News. People are going to know. It's just the Twin Cities. Fine. The next day, my brother in Florida calls. Hey, did I just see you on Fox News? Talking about drunk birds wearing a big hat. I said, yes, Chris, that was me. He's like, that's A-Up. And so I was like, okay, it's in Florida. Okay, oh, it's all over the country. I did some Googling, so I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to worry about this too much. Well, then my phone, my Twitter, back when it was called Twitter, my all social media is exploding. Because it made it on Ellen DeGeneres and Jimmy Fallon. Ellen DeGeneres actually said, yep, folks, that's a real park ranger. That is absolutely not Kate McKinnon from Saturday Night Live dressed up as one. Which I did take that as a compliment. But I was like, and then the Washington office with the National Park Service was like, hey, we know you know a lot about birds, but could you maybe simmer it down when you're in uniform? I was like, yes. What really threw it over the top was after Ellen DeGeneres released my quotes, she had some comedian dress up as a giant bird, as if he were Brett Kavanaugh, screaming and yelling and crying about, hey, sometimes he's made mistakes and been drunk. So the Park Service wasn't exactly thrilled with me. So I would tell this story and even show the Ellen DeGeneres segment at the Park Service, and I would tell everybody, my job is to prevent this from happening to you. I miraculously still have a job. If you want to be in the media, let me help you, but don't end up a cautionary tale with Jimmy Fallon making fun of your accent. And so everyone's like, oh, that's what a public affairs officer does. Okay, cool. So then I went a little mad during the pandemic. It started off by, I kind of moved in with somebody. He was a birder, I couldn't resist. And then I turned his very cool backyard with some native plants into my own private birding photography studio. This was an epic day during the pandemic. I had a sparrow trifecta, fox sparrow, Harris's sparrow, and a white-throated all around my bird bath. Then I got really into insects, taking slow-mo of leafcutter bees, doing time-lapse photography of cicadas, bringing the cicadas into my office while they emerged. That didn't go backwards at all. Isn't it cool, though? And check out that lava lamp. Yeah, so and I went a little mad. And then I went half-seas on a trailer in a retirement community in the Rio Grande Valley, Texas, about 4 miles from the Mexico border. That actually was pretty cool. I got to it was right next to Estero Llano Grande State Park, which is the best park in the Rio Grande Valley. So I would walk over there all the time. And then one winter, everything went haywire, and I got my lifer male blue bunting at Resaca de la Palma. It was great. Actually, the day I got that was the day that I got the job offer to come work up at Denali National Park. Oh, and then I also wrote a book that went viral because when it asked me to put in the Canada Goose range, I said everywhere. They could be inside your house right now. I don't know if anyone here is a writer, but have you ever had a deadline and you just needed to get the word count in? And you thought, I'm just going to get this done, and we'll fix it in editing later. And the editor didn't fix it. But it's actually what sells the book, so. But then I ended up moving up to Alaska. And it was a very weird and wonderful place. This was actually taken up in Utqiagvik, formerly Barrow. That is Caribou Head on the tundra. But yeah, I worked for Denali National Park and Preserve. I was the voice of the park. I wrangled the media. I organized and led congressional delegations. Ooh. That is me. That is my phone warning me that I need to wrap this up soon. So yeah, I did that. And my first day in the park, I had three things I wanted to do. I wanted to ride my bike to say that I'd ridden my bike in Denali National Park and Preserve. I wanted to go birding. I really wanted to see and hear the Alaska state bird, the willow ptarmigan. And spruce grouse was my nemesis bird. And we'll get to that in a minute. So I headed out, and sure enough, right away, a male spruce grouse comes out, or not spruce grouse, willow ptarmigan comes out. And so I pulled over, and he came up. Let's see if we can listen to this. Isn't that the most ridiculous bird sound ever? That is the Alaska state bird. So I got him right away, and then I kept bike riding. And anyone here have a nemesis bird? A bird that you try and see and never do? No one has a nemesis bird? Yes. Cedar waxwing is your... Okay, I can relate, because we had a population of spruce grouse that lived in Minnesota, and it was about 4 hours every time I would drive up. Even if someone had said they've been here for the last 30 days, I would get there, the grouse wouldn't be there, maybe a pine marten would, maybe a northern goshawk would, maybe a great gray owl, which they're all cool, but it wasn't what I was going for. And I used to host a meetup called Birds and Beers, and when we would do intros, people would be smug about it. I saw a spruce grouse this weekend. And I finally was like, you know what, maybe I don't need to see a spruce grouse. I think people just enjoy tormenting me so much, I'm just going to not look. But when I got the job at Denali, I mentioned one of the reasons I applied was to try and get a spruce grouse. Before I got up there, people were telling me, like, I've got a spruce grouse in my yard today. This is where I saw them. They hang outside of the HR cabin. So I'm on my bike ride, and after I have my grand old time with the willow ptarmigan, I go past Teklanika, I go past the Teklanika Bridge, I go around the corner into the boreal forest, and I see a black dot. I get off my bike, I throw it to the side, get my Swarovski binoculars up on it, and those Swarovski ELs gave me the best lifer view ever of my spruce grouse. And so I sat there on the ground. I'd actually packed my spotting scope in my bag, so I'm on the ground with my spotting scope, and I got to watch it display. Isn't that a sassy bird? Now, I'm not standing close to my microphone right now because there is a slight string of profanity and me telling myself, be cool, Sharon, be cool, don't scare the birds. But it was so exciting. There ended up being one right next to me that flew and chased that male off. But that became the spruce grouse spot. I would sometimes be taking reporters. Like, I drove Good Morning America through there one day, and I was like, oh, hey, there's a spruce grouse. And they're like, oh, my gosh, these birds are so cool and easy to see. And I was like, no, they're not. But once you get your nemesis bird, you get them all the time. They would be on my deck. They would be outside my office. That's one outside the HR cabin. This is my sled dog Party. I was her volunteer dog walker. She was very good at finding them, and she would go on point. And then I'd be like, oh my God, spruce grass. And then she'd look up at you like, I know, I'm so good. She was a little irritated with me that I wouldn't let her eat them. All right, I'm going to wrap this up quick. So when I went out to get the spruce grouse that day, I came across some bear poop on the road in my bicycle. And I was like, oh, wow, cool, look at that, grizzly bear poop. 2 days later, I drove through there for a meeting, and one of the tour buses was driving towards me, driving a grizzly bear towards me.
So I'm on my way to a meeting, and transit buses had a bear in the road, so I just did what I'm supposed to do. I pulled over, and now the bear is like totally walking towards me. There's not really anything I can do except sit here. Maybe should roll up the window though.
That's actually a park rule. I think it was a good one. Yeah, I'm a survivor. Yeah. Yeah. I had bear spray on my handles on my bike. I do appreciate being in the Twin Cities metro area now where I don't have to have bear spray on my bike handles. So, but yeah, that was the grizzly bear going by. So, and then I want to leave time for questions, but I will say, I'm just going to do a quick moose story. Moose were the bane of my existence. The only nice thing I can say about moose now, after being charged by them twice, is that they're delicious. They would make me late for meetings. This was one that charged me. I had just come back with a hike from with my friend Kelly and Leah, and we apparently drove by this moose and didn't know it. And as we get out of my car and we're walking towards my apartment, I was like, was that moose there the whole time? Did we drive by it? And he turned around, flattened his ears. We knew it was coming, and we ran. Like 3 mice trying to get into a tiny hole. That was us trying to scramble into my Arctic entry. And he charged us. He got right up to the door, and then he just started charging everything in the neighborhood. He charged my neighbor's ATV. But so moose they were constantly making us late for meetings. I would be in the meeting cabin, and we'd have a 2.5-hour meeting, and then it was time to go, and there'd be 2 moose out there. And someone would say, oh, we're going to be here another 15 minutes. Why don't we go back to subject matter B and discuss that for another 15 minutes? One day I was walking Party, and a moose came out of the woods and wouldn't let us get back to headquarters, and I had to get her back for a program in the next 15 minutes. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? She has to be back. I have to be at a meeting. I think that moose is going to charge us. And one of the tour drivers came up, and so I gave him the universal sign for, hey, moose in the park. And he's like, yeah, cool. And he pulled up, and he's like, which dog do you got? And I was like, I've got Party. And he's like, cool. And he gave Party's story. And I was like, hey, Chris, we have to get to a meeting. Can you creep your bus along so we can get to the parking lot? Can you be our cover for the moose? I got you. And so, yeah, he creeped the bus along. And Party and I got right past that moose. But the absolute worst thing was that one day I loaned my car to a guy from Florida so he could go pick up his girlfriend at the Fairbanks airport 2 hours away. And when he brought it back, I had these weird swirl marks on my car. And I was like, did he try to wash my car? Did he try to wipe it down at a gas station? What was he thinking? It's just going to be messy for the rest of the winter. And then the next day, I got a text from the neighborhood chat that said, hey, FYI, big stinky moose licking cars. And that's what would happen. You'd go to the post office, you'd come back, there's a big tongue lick right on your driver's side door handle. They love to lick all the minerals off of our car. So, and if you want to hear more about my time in Alaska or a ton of stories, you should come on the bird walk tomorrow or Saturday morning. So thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, I have 6 minutes for questions.
Any questions?
What's your next nemesis?
My next, it's kind of resplendent quetzal. So the question was asked, what's my next nemesis bird? And I've heard them. I've seen their shadow, but I haven't actually seen the bird. I haven't gone to Costa Rica, which I feel is it's one of my favorite things when someone's like, "Oh, you're a birder. Have you been to Costa Rica?" No, but I've been to Cuba. I've been to Kazakhstan, but no, yeah, resplendent quetzal probably.
Any other questions?
I live in Chino Valley, and for a number of years in the fall, there'd be like 200 Swainson's hawks flying in a circle
Yeah.
and roosting. Is that common?
During migration, yeah. So the question is seeing a big congregation of Swainson's hawks in the fall, is that common? During migration, for sure. Some people refer to it as a kettle of hawks because when they really start spinning in those thermals, it kind of looks like peas boiling in a kettle. But you can go to a number of places to see Swainson's hawk migration. If you go down into Mexico, you can see like 1 million fly over. Clay, do you get big numbers of Swainsons at Corpus Christi? So yeah, 30,000 Swainson. So yeah, it's. Mm-hmm.
2 weeks ago, they had a single day of hawks migrating by. 500,000 turkey vultures.
Oof.
600,000 Swainson's hawks. That's 1.1 million hawks counted by 4 guys.
That's.
I can't imagine how they survived.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool that you get to see. Swainsons are a cool hawk. They eat a lot of insects, so that's one of the reasons why they go down into South America. You got to load up, and you have to wait for the winds to be right. That's one of the things that makes hawk watching so magical. You can have days where you get those hundreds of thousands of birds, and then you have days where it's cloudy and misty, and the front keeps all the birds up north. And then once that front breaks, then all heck breaks loose, and you just get thousands of birds, or in the cases of Mexico or Panama, millions of birds flying over.
Any other questions?
Thank you. What do you call about 100 ravens in a tree at one time?
And unkindness.
A kindness?
And unkindness.
Unkindness. So what are they doing? I saw that a few winters ago on Cortez Street here.
Any number of things can be happening. If it's the wintertime, they could be forming a roost. In the Twin Cities metro area, we don't have ravens, but we have crows, and we have a roost that's some years about 50,000 birds that come into the metro. So it's kind of safety in numbers. And there's also some socialization that happens at roost, too. You know, the family groups get together, and the young birds that were raised this year will help the family the next year to raise the chicks. Well, once they get beyond that, they have to find their own mate. So what better way to do it than at this big raven party? So, yeah. Yeah. There also could have been something dead there, too.
What is your current job? Question from the back.
Looking for a new job. I got doged in the spring. So the day I found out my job was going away, I found out that I was eligible to adopt Party, the sled dog. So right now I'm looking for a job, but I've done some freelance work. I did some emergency bird surveys this summer. Clay booked me to help out at some booths this spring. If anybody needs a public affairs director, publicist, ghostwriter, I don't know, someone to bag some seed.
Well, great. Let's give a big round of applause for Sharon.
Thank you.
Remember, sign up for the bird walk. Eric has the list, the sign-up sheet. And thank you to the Prescott Audubon Society. And thank you all. Have a good night.